Not so long ago, someone suggested that I should do a post about financial planning for the menopause or the perimenopause. And it's certainly something that I have thought about before because I am kind of in the middle of my perimenopause, and compared to a lot of women, I feel in a comparatively lucky situation. And what I mean by that is that A, I'm not getting really bad symptoms, but equally I am self-employed. I work from home. Most of the work that I do does not involve me having to be in an office, having to commute, having to go to external meetings. And so, given the unpredictable nature of menopause symptoms, I don't have to factor that in too often. So I do have about 12 hours a week of cleaning jobs, which I do, but they are only in 2-hour chunks and they are spaced out throughout the week. So if I do have a bout where I am suffering from symptoms which make things difficult, I've only got to get through a couple of hours. And my symptoms have been reasonably consistent since my menopause started in 2021. My main symptoms are the fatigue. The lack of energy is the most crippling thing of all because it impacts everything you do. And that comes and goes with varying degrees of severity. So most of the time I have a general underlying lack of energy. It's not severe, but for instance, if I go out and do like a hike, or I go into town and go into the city and spend 3 or 4 hours in the city, I'll need to rest when I get back because I'm just flat out lacking energy. All my cleaning jobs are now 2 hours, and I've worked out that 2 hours seems to be manageable for me and doesn't seem to cause me any setbacks. But that's because at the moment I have that low-lying level of lack of energy. Up until just a few weeks ago, I was getting what they call crashing fatigue, where you'll be all right 1 minute and then suddenly you'll be really tired, and you will be so tired that you practically cannot move for 3 or 4 hours. And that would happen. I might only get it once a week. I might get it 2 or 3 times a week. And that was impossible to predict. That could happen at any time. So you just have to work with it. The other symptoms that I tend to get are headaches. They used to be really bad at the start. Again, in recent months, I have noticed that because normally my headaches last for 3 days. So there'll be a day of it coming in, a day where I can usually hardly function at all, and then a day where I can feel it's just starting to lift and then it goes. What I've noticed now is that is generally taking 2 days, and paracetamol taken regularly every 4 to 5 hours will keep it at bay enough so that I can still keep functioning. If I didn't do that, I would be in serious trouble. The other things I've had are foot pain, which I have had for several years and didn't realise until earlier this year was actually a symptom of menopause. I had absolutely no idea. I thought I'd done some damage to my feet because last October I bought my under-desk treadmill, and I'd also been doing a lot of hiking last year, and I thought that I'd antagonised some sort of injury. And it turns out that because when you're in menopause your collagen levels drop, and that means that your skin loses its firmness, and all this is like collagen and stuff like that. And you also have collagen in the soles of your feet because it pads your feet for when you're walking, and you lose that collagen during the menopause, which makes walking painful, and that's why I keep getting all this heel pain. Suddenly, again, in the last month or so, I've noticed that has started to ease up a bit. The other two things that I get, one of them is the brain fog, which is just ridiculous. Since my other symptoms have started to decrease, I've noticed the brain fog has got a lot worse. My memory is absolutely appalling at the moment. If I don't write things down, by the end of the day, I've forgotten what I've had for lunch. It's that bad. So I absolutely rely on Google Calendar. I rely on writing notes. I rely on always putting things back in the same places when I finish with them, because I won't be able to find something again. And again, that comes and goes with whatever's going on. And the last symptom that I seem to get a lot of is itchy skin, which drives me nuts. Often it's in my back, so of course it's in the one place that's really hard to get to. But at the moment, it's mostly in my arms. So it's my arms all the way down, and it just drives me insane. Again, it comes and goes. It's not consistent 24 hours a day. It comes and goes, and you just have to get by with it. So my symptoms compared to a lot of people are not that bad. When I compare my experience to that of my best friend, who has had every symptom, and they reckon there are something like 52 symptoms. I've heard them say 70. And she's had everything, absolutely everything. And it's just insane. She has days where, she can't even leave the house. And she has 2 kids that she has to get to school and back. She runs a house. And I have literally no idea how she has managed. Her menopause started the year before mine, and hers has been an absolute horrific experience. Now, I've learnt over time how to manage mine. So I always keep paracetamol to hand in case headaches come on, because they come on without any warning at all. And you need to make sure, I need to make sure that I have paracetamol to hand. Nothing else seems to work. I've tried ibuprofen. Nothing stronger seems to work on them. For some reason, paracetamol works really well with my body, and it'll dull the symptoms enough that I can get on with what I need to get on with until it then goes. And now that I'm down to kind of like 2 days on a headache, it's much more manageable than it used to be. I am very careful to keep to regular sleep patterns. So I always go to bed at the same time. I get up at the same time. I make sure I'm getting enough hours of sleep. And I'm tending not to need naps during the day at the moment, which is great. Drinking water, hydration is incredibly important. Hydration can be really triggering for headaches and things. So I've just learnt to build 2 litres of water into my daily life. I don't always manage it, but I try to. I'm not always disciplined, but I always have a bottle of water to hand. And vitamins and supplements. So I started experimenting with this last year, probably around early autumn. I started taking magnesium because I heard it was good for fatigue. And we've always got to remember is things like vitamins and supplements don't work overnight. It's not like taking a painkiller. It can take a long time for it to get into your body. So it's very hard to tell what's actually working for you. I have now been doing my supplements and vitamins since around last October. And whether that's having an impact on how I'm feeling at the moment, I don't know. So I take magnesium. That's supposed to be good for fatigue. And it's something that is supposed to be really good for the menopause generally. I also take vitamin D and K2. Now, I started taking vitamin D this winter just gone on recommendation. I'd never done it before, and I really do suffer from the low light levels and what have you. And I felt like I had a better winter experience this year, maybe because of that. And then I stopped taking them in March, and then I read that when you're in menopause, it's sometimes a good idea to just keep on taking them. So I started taking them again. So I have those. I've also started taking vitamin B12 because I heard that the B vitamins are good for menopause as well. So I've been doing that for a couple of months now. And the only other thing that I take, which is on prescription, and I don't take prescription things because it's an expense I can't afford. I'm living a frugal lifestyle. I have a limited amount of income, and I don't want to waste my money on things like HRT. I don't think it would benefit me that much. I don't feel like I need it. But my practice, my GP practice, has allowed me to stay on the pill, which I have been on the contraceptive pill on and off since I was 18. It's always worked really well for me. when you get to a certain age, they will, if you're on the combined, the normal combined pill, they'll put you onto a lower dose, because as you get older, you become more prone to risks of things like blood clots and things like that. So I was put onto the lower dose, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. I can't even remember. And they just monitor you, and provided that everything's going okay, they let you on it. And I think that that has probably also helped with my hormone levels. And that's free. So that's my little package of things that I take. Yes, they cost money. I get around the vitamin issue, the cost of vitamins, by always buying them on Nectar Points from Sainsbury's. 2 of the survey sites I use to earn money pay me in Nectar Points, so I can always basically get all my vitamins and supplements for free. Purely because I'm buying them on Nectar Points that I've earned through doing surveys, and that is an absolute lifeline for me. That's really good. In terms of money, the menopause is a weird thing. So I don't know how you think about it, if you're experiencing this now, or maybe you're much younger, or maybe you're much older and you've been through it. But I never thought about how it was going to affect my life. I never even considered the menopause until my best friend started telling me about her symptoms, but then I never thought about how it might affect me. I have no recollection of my mother ever talking to me about menopause symptoms. I've never had any discussions with her until very recently, and she briefly mentioned how she kind of just sailed through hers. And I think a lot of your response to that time of life can be genetic. So if your grandmothers had a bad time, then that might be an indicator that you need to plan. So it's worth knowing what the situation is with your female relatives, because that can be an indicator of how genetically you may react to it. But I never ever considered how I might have to financially plan for the menopause. I never considered that I might not be able to work, or that, I didn't know what my situation was going to be. So if my situation now had been like it was 15 years ago, I would have been trying to hold down a full-time job. And I'm pretty sure that I would have lost that job by now, because the number of days where I would have just woken up in the morning and been unable to come into work. And the problem is, you can't predict when those symptoms are suddenly going to come on. You can wake up you can be fine one day, wake up the next morning and have a headache and be unable to get out of bed. So you can't plan your time off from work. You're taking sick days, but you could be taking multiple sick days every month. And depending on the sort of job you have, and I still think that employers probably are generally not sympathetic to people that have circumstances which make them unreliable, like women in menopause, like child caring or parental care, where they just want a bum on a seat. They want you to do your work, and they want to pay you for the work you do, not for being off sick. I know that working from home allows more flexibility, but there may be days where you can't even switch the computer on if your symptoms are really bad. But I never planned for it, and I think this is something really important to do. As I say, I've been lucky that I am self-employed. I generally work under my own steam. I'm generally not dictated to about how much work I have to do. I don't have to do meetings or commute or anything like that. So if I have a day where I just can't work, I just don't work. Except, of course, with the cleaning jobs. But again, they're only in 2-hour chunks, so it's easier to do. But your job may not be like that. So I did some polls on a survey site that I have that allows you to post up your own polls. So I just wanted to show you some statistics. So the first one that I asked was, older women, has the menopause caused problems with work? 20% of the respondents said they'd had to give up work. which is crazy. Now, this is only a small number of people. I only had 97 respondents to this poll. So 20% had to give up work. Another 12% are considering giving up work. 13% are not coping well, but are self-employed or not employed. And 55% are coping and are self-employed or not employed. So that's a really interesting statistic. So there are 20% of people who lost their income due to the menopause, and 12% who are in that situation potentially. The other question I asked was about symptoms, because I'm always interested in that. I've been quite lucky with the number of symptoms I have, but other people are not. So women sometimes have to manage many symptoms of menopause. Some sources say up to 52. How many symptoms have you experienced? 39% said 1 to 5. 27% said 6 to 15 symptoms. 4% had 25 plus, and 30% had 16 to 25 symptoms. That's bonkers. That is just such a lot of symptoms. And I know that some of the other standard symptoms that you get, like hot flashes and dizziness, passing out. I very occasionally get a hot flash. It doesn't happen very often. I probably get one every few months. And twice this year, I'm sorry to say, twice this year, once last year and once this year, I have just been in relatively normal situations, but I think that since starting the menopause, I've become more susceptible to not anxiety overload, because I don't really get anxiety. But the first occasion was in a restaurant. It was a restaurant I knew well. I was with family. It was a big family meal, a big celebration for birthdays. And I almost passed out at the table. Just came out of nowhere. I suddenly got really, really hot. My body was suddenly dripping with sweat, and I had to get on the floor on my hands and knees and put my head on the floor. And then 5 minutes later, it was gone like nothing had ever happened. It was the strangest thing, but it wasn't fun. The second occasion was earlier this year, when I went for my very first mammogram. And again, it wasn't a scary situation really. It was unfamiliar to me. Staff were lovely, really, really wonderful nurses there. But it was a new situation. It didn't upset me, but halfway through, they've done one side and I think they just started the second side. And she asked me to breathe deeply, and I just went bang, and I almost fell on the floor. So, and again, a few minutes just to sit down and I was fine. But it's those awkward moments when you don't want it to happen, you know, so you have to be careful about that. So those were a couple of other symptoms that I am aware of but don't get regularly. So again, that's a lot that people are doing with. If your average number of symptoms is something like, well, you've got 6 to 15 and then 16 to 25. That's a lot of symptoms to have to deal with in your life. Unpredictable symptoms, you know, they might come and go. And so the last question I asked, which was the one that's relevant to this, is, women, do you wish you were advised about financial planning for the menopause, i.e. having to take a break from work because of symptoms? 60% of respondents, now I had 106 respondents to this, 60% said yes, they wish they had been advised on financial planning. 25% said no. 6% said I am financially supported by somebody else. So I'm presuming that is women who don't work because they have a partner, I suppose, because maybe they're stay at home with children or whatever. 9% said they did financially plan. So 9% of people had thought enough about this to proactively do something about it. And I suppose the question is, how do you proactively deal with this? Well, for those of you who have either given up work or are considering giving up work completely because of your symptoms, you need to replace your income for however long you need to replace your income. Now, the menopause can last up to 10 years. And if you have a bad experience, that means you might need 10 years worth of income, or at least 10 years worth of expenses to keep the roof over your head, food on the table, and all your bills paid. You might not have a very exciting life, but at least you will still keep your home together, etc. For those of you who don't feel like you need to give up work but are struggling, it might be that you need to think about putting aside money for maybe extended holidays, like a sabbatical from work if you're going through a particularly bad period. It may be that you need help around the home because the fatigue is so bad you can't keep up. You know, you might go out and do your day job and be able to manage, but coming home and at weekends, you might feel that you would benefit from, say, hiring a cleaner to come and clean your house, after school childminding, so that you get a couple of hours to decompress after work and replenish your energy stocks. Things like that. Someone to do the shopping if you need, if shopping is a, you know, you might live miles and miles from the shops and you finish work and you're too exhausted to go and traipse around a supermarket. And you can do food orders, but it may not be as simple as that. So there are all these other things that might mean you don't need to put together huge amounts of income, but you might need that backup support. And of course, depending on how risk averse you feel, say, like I said about, look at the genetics of your family, speak to female relatives, what has their experience been with the menopause? And if you find that the women in your family don't tend to suffer from it, then maybe put aside a bit of money to cover things where you might be having a hard time of it. Maybe you do want a cleaner. Maybe you do want some, if you have kids, that it will be great to have some after school childcare for a few hours, 3 or 4 days a week. Think about that and think how expensive those things are as well. And in terms of planning for that, I mean, the thing is that you're expected to plan for everything now. So as soon as you leave school or university, you're expected to start paying into your retirement plan. You're expected to start saving for your first home, all that sort of thing. Your menopause is likely to hit somewhere after 35 and can last 10 years. And for those women who've come out the other side, you may also find that you never fully shake off all those symptoms afterwards. Some women live with them for the rest of their lives because it's the change of hormones, and depending on how your body reacts is entirely dependent on how you need to plan for this. I would always say plan for the worst situation, because if you find you don't need the money, you've got a stash of money you can spend on something else when you come out the other side. Think of it like that. You know, if you put it into a savings account now and put a bit in each month or each week, depending on how you do your savings, and you put it into a savings account like, I don't know, a cash ISA or something like that, or a higher interest account that's locked, that you take out, that you can start taking out at about the time where you think your menopause might start, it'll accrue interest as well, so you'll build up a bigger pot of money. And then if you find you don't need to spend it, or you only need to spend a bit of it, you've got extra money to spend on something else. Brilliant. You get that money back. You haven't lost it. It's not like you put it into retirement funds, you can't touch it until you're 70 or something. So think of it as an investment. And when you're going through such a stressful time with your health like this, and it's unpredictable, you don't really know what's going to happen. It changes so much between woman to woman. One less thing to worry about is, in the midst of all this, am I going to lose my home? Am I going to end up in debt because I can't pay my rent or my mortgage? Or am I going to have to start skipping meals, not putting on the heating because I can't afford to work now, I'm too ill to work, I can't hold down a job. It's like planning your emergency fund. Always have 6 months of emergency savings. and it may be that you just quadruple that fund, or you have it as a separate fund. I would say invest in it as a separate fund. Start as soon as you can, because if you think, like, let's say you go to school and then you go to university. Let's say you come out of university at 21. How long have you got before your menopause could potentially start? 35. It can start that early. Mine was 45, 46. But you don't know when that's going to happen. And as I say, it's good to do some of that research. But I would definitely be looking at doing some financial planning. I think that if my situation had been different, like I live on my own, I don't have anyone else to support me, I don't have that backup. If I had been holding down a full-time job and living as I am now, I think I would have been struggling. Because whilst you cannot lose your job for something like this, they can always find a way around it. And it doesn't mean that you will end up keeping your job. Or you might find that you don't want to keep your job because you just can't do it. I remember years and years ago when I used to work in London, there was another PA in the pool of PAs that I worked amongst, and she got migraines, and I had never experienced a migraine. I had no idea how bad it felt. And there were days where she just wouldn't turn up for work, and then you'd find out that's because a migraine had kicked in. And it wasn't until my first year of menopause when it was that really, really hot summer that we had a few years ago. And where they told you to shut all your curtains and shut your windows and just hide in your home because it was like 38 degrees or something ridiculous like that. And I had 2 headaches kick in, which I presume may have been related to being more dehydrated than usual. I had 2 headaches both within that space of time when we had that heat wave. And I'd never experienced anything like it. I would liken it to a migraine. And I was completely crippled by it. It's the most agonising pain that I've ever felt in my life. I couldn't stop it. I didn't know what it was because I'd never experienced it before, and at that point I didn't realise that I was on that menopausal cusp. And I hope I never feel it again because it was hideous. So if you appreciate things like getting migraines, you already understand how fragile your working week can be if you get things like that, and if they're that unpredictable, which they are. So this is just an overview of my thoughts on this. I haven't had a really, really bad experience. I haven't had to financially plan for the menopause, thankfully, because I never did. So if I'd needed to, I'd have been in serious trouble now, because I never did. And I think that there are more conversations to be had on this. So do add your comments to this video. Add your perspective. And I do get comments from women talking about their experiences, what they've had to go through. And let's keep this conversation going, because I think there's more to be said on this, and I get ideas from the comments. So if there's anything you want me to cover more on, anything else you think that I've not emphasised enough, I mean, if you're going to plan for this, start planning as soon as you start having an income. Because like I said, if you end up not needing it, you've got all this extra cash you can spend. So it's an investment, but you may actually get a reward back at the end if you don't need it. And if you do need it, it's protecting you. Because you may not have a partner who can pay all your bills. My best friend is lucky that she doesn't work. Her partner pays for everything. But had she not been in that situation and she had to have worked, it would have been a very different situation. I literally, I don't know how she's got through the last 4 or 5 years. It's been horrific. So I have that other end of the scale to observe from a distance. But I know that, you know, there are so many different variations on this. You can't predict what your experience is going to be. So take it seriously. You really do need to take it seriously. It's not just, oh, it'll be a couple of headaches, I'll get a couple of hot flashes, but I'll be fine. It may not be like that. And it's worth understanding that. I've watched lots and lots of videos and read lots of articles about the menopause, but I've never heard anyone talking about financially planning for it. I will post up at the end here, if I can find them, other videos that are related to what I've spoken about. But if you also go through some of my videos, you will find, particularly in the day in the life ones, where I talk about things that I've read about or heard about. So it's worth, you know, I will drop the odd thing into a conversation if it's relevant. So like for at the moment, not having the fatigue has been liberating for me. I've never enjoyed work so much in the last 4 or 5 years as I do in this last few weeks, where I've got more of my energy back. But becoming more forgetful has been a frustration. And clumsy. I seem to be going through a phase of constantly dropping things. When I'm out on my cleaning jobs, I'm trying to be really careful, because if I drop someone else's stuff, I don't want to break anything. But I am a real klutz at the moment. I was dropping things all day yesterday, and it's just so frustrating. And I'll get odd days like that, and I know it's related to like sloppy coordination and forgetfulness and all that sort of thing, and it's all part of it. You know, the range of symptoms is just mind-boggling. So yeah, do take this seriously. Anyway, so do add comments below. I will make more videos if there are things that you want me to cover in more detail, other things you want me to talk about, and I probably will end up doing a follow-up based on comments that I get, because this is a really interesting subject, but it's really important that you protect yourself, because work isn't necessarily going to support you, and that's just the way things are. So thank you for watching, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye bye.